Hello, I'm Kristen. I have been a police wife for 10 years. I have 2 boys, and I'm so excited to talk to you today all about Police Wife 101, which is the title of today's video. If you are a cop wife, police officer wife, deputy wife, sheriff's wife, trooper's wife, then this is the video for you. If you are new or you're just in a place where you feel like you could learn more, which was totally me the first few years of my marriage to my police officer. My husband is with LA, so he's in Los Angeles. He's been there for 16 years, so he was there when we were dating, he was there when we were engaged, and ever since. It has been a journey for me. I felt resentful and kind of stuck in the beginning, and I will talk through that. I have several different topics or themes I want to go over in today's video, and I have made some videos in the past on some of these topics, and I will link them below if there's more information or if I have a blog or a resource about it. I have a few resources that I want to share. I have a Police Wife devotional, which has 41 actual stories, some of which I'll share today, but not all of them, that are relatable stories, things that you will probably go through as a police wife. And that has been out for over a year. And then I just came out with a children's book called Boots by the Door, inspired by my 2 boys, and it is illustrated by another police wife. I wanted to share that with you guys. It's really special to my heart, and our reviews on it are that people, like, it's exactly them. They see themselves in it and their kids do, and it just creates like a really nice space for your kids to, if you have kids now or in the future, to kind of have a book that's really for them. That's kind of unique. And then the last thing is my husband wrote a book this year, which is so crazy. He's been working on it for a long time. It makes me cry and laugh. It's called Why Is Everything Wet? And his dad was actually a cop, and so I hope that you will check that out, because he writes and dedicated it to his father, who we lost a couple of years ago, who got actually injured on duty when Rick was just a little boy, and Rick still continued to choose law enforcement as his profession, which is super special. And he talks about his father and kind of growing up with that, and then also his own life as a police officer, and it's like a memoir. So I hope you'll check that out too. I think that will help you to understand your officer a little bit more, because Rick is really raw in talking through like the challenges of being a police officer, specifically like a metro officer, which can be kind of unique. Okay, so if you are a police wife, then you will probably have to face something called shift work, which is kind of where there are 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, maybe 8-hour shifts depending on where you are, and they're all throughout the day. So it's not like a normal 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, which I was kind of used to. So I specifically chose like a profession that had holidays off. I love that. I have summers off. I have a teacher schedule, but I'm a professor. It's an amazing schedule that's very stable. There is not that much stability to shift work in the law enforcement profession, and that was something that I really struggled with, because I love stability. Like I said, like I feel like I specifically chose this my profession for a reason, and realizing that like it took me a long time to really accept and embrace, I should say, that like Rick's schedule was now mine. So just to be specific, my husband has a 4-week DP, they call it, and that stands for deployment period, which is also kind of interesting and something to like embrace and think about, is that if his schedule is called a deployment period, that is unique as well. It's not just your average shift work. Like, he is deploying for us, for the city, to keep the city safe, and thus that implies, like, even though he has a schedule that's maybe a 10-hour shift, at the end of the shift, there's a later rest or there's some reason that he's needed to stay, then he has to stay. Like, it's not really optional, a lot of the overtime that our officers have to do. And so that's another theme that I'm not sure I wrote down, but that is really common, is overtime, and just kind of the reality that that's going to be a part of your life. And like I said, it took me a long time to embrace it. I would feel the schedule, I have a video on this one. The schedule is like the #1 reason that we argued. And I feel like the reason that we did argue over the schedule and the shift work, I want to go back to the clarifying his schedule. So he gets the 4-week deployment period, but it doesn't correspond with the calendar months. So right now, for example, it's October. We know maybe 2.5 or 3 weeks of his schedule. We don't know whether or not he's off officially on Halloween yet, and we'll get that DP like that week before. That's kind of hard, right? For like planning ahead drives me nuts. But I talk a lot more about how I like overcame that in that video. but I feel like embracing it as my own, as a part of like, I'm his partner and now this is our schedule to kind of grapple with and challenge with. And then also, after accepting it, designing my life with our boys to be independent whether or not Rick is there, because unfortunately, because of his role as a police officer, I cannot depend on him. So when I do that, sounds bad, sounds harsh, but when I do design my life to be prepared that it's basically all on me, when Rick is off, I'm thankful rather than being frustrated or resentful, like when he's not able to be there for us and help us. So I hope that this helps you like not feel alone if you're frustrated with the schedule. Another challenge that Rick didn't do a lot of, but that is really common, that has to do with the scheduling, is that a lot of officers feel like they need to take overtime, and they will take voluntary overtime, which is different from like kind of the required overtime that comes at like the end of a shift or something, or if there's some emergency that they are needed to come in for. So if there is optional overtime, that's something that I think you guys need to negotiate, that you need to negotiate with your officer and talk with them about, like, do you need more help at home? And if you do, then you guys need to spend less money so that you don't need that overtime money. I know that's not like so easy to say, but I think that has to be like a family choice of, would you rather him be home and not have that extra money, or would you rather have the extra money and he goes to work? Like, that's totally fine too, but it's something that you should discuss together as a couple. So the second thing is that most police officers, they're doing it not just for the money. We make money and it's great. We make okay money. We're not rich. We make okay money. I want to clarify, in general, it depends on where you're working and all of that. But they have a passion for it. They have some kind of drive, something that is keeping them in that job. It is not an easy job at all, right? So, and I feel like if you read Rick's book, Why Is Everything Wet? You will see that it is horrific, some of the things that they deal with. And I was listening to this podcast, I'm gonna forget his name, I'll link it below, where they interviewed this officer who was with LAPD for 20 years, and he had retired, and he said, you should retire at 20 years. This is a very hard job and it will change you, and you need to have a different kind of life after, like allow yourself to have a different kind of life. And it really hit me hard. Like, I know that about Rick. I know it's a hard job. So anyway, so they don't pick it for the money. They pick it because of this passion, and that is something for you to remember. And was hard for me to really like fully embrace too, that Rick does it because he loves it and he sees something in it that is a part of who he is. And so if you're fighting the schedule and you're fighting, I don't know, like everything that comes with the job, it's almost like offensive to them, I feel like, because they have so much passion for it. So it's important to remember that you are important to them too, but there needs to be a balance there. And sometimes we do need to ask our officers to give us a little bit more at home, but that they're going to stay, for example, like that overtime at the end of the night, they're going to stay because they feel this drive to stay, not because they don't want to be home with you. And they would like to be home, I believe. I believe Rick would like to be home, but he has had to work a lot of overtime in his career. The next thing that I get a lot is questions on communication. So communication can be difficult when our officers are at work, right? So they are kind of, I'm going to bring this up later, I think, but hyper vigilant, right? So they have to be really careful with the things that they do and their awareness of their environment. Here we're kind of in a liberal city here. Rick has to be aware of his surroundings. Like, there's a lot of police hate, which I would talk about later, I had on my list. So because of that kind of stuff, like, we don't want to be texting and calling them all the time. They're not able to text us and call us all the time. And they're working this super long shifts. Rick is gone usually on his days when he's on shift, 15 hours. That's a huge chunk of the day. He usually, right now he's on days, but he was on night shift for our first 8 years of marriage. And right now he leaves before we get up. So he's leaving super early. It's like 4:30 in the morning, and we don't see him until 7:30 at night. I hope I did that math right, but it's a really long day. So throughout that day, a lot of things happen, right? For him and for us as a family. And then when he comes home, We are so excited to see him. My boys are so excited to see him. They're jumping all over him. We have a new puppy that's jumping all over him. And it's chaotic, and I want to tell him things too. What we have found is that, and I get this question a lot from people who are like dating a cop, they are used to maybe more communication with someone that they're dating, and realizing that like when their officer's on shift, they're not calling, they're not texting. I don't usually talk to Rick on the phone during those 15 hours. We usually text. Like this morning, we had like an exchange text of like, how are you feeling? Because we both had this like awful congestion that won't go away. I've been wanting to film this video for a while and haven't. I'm just doing it anyway. And so just kind of, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And that was it. And that might be it till 7:30 tonight, even though it's not even noon. So that might sound like, to someone who is not used to that. I'm used to it, so it's not a big deal to me. I don't believe that it means Rick doesn't care or that I don't care. We both work, so I'm usually working while Rick is, for the time that my boys are at school, I work, so I'm busy trying to shove a lot of work in a short amount of time. And he's busy and he's out there working. I will only call him if it is a very important thing. Usually it has to do with our boys, because sometimes like I need him to talk to them. And I talk about this. I have a couple of videos. I have a whole playlist on like solo parenting and motherhood as a police wife. Definitely check that out if you are a mom, because that is like its own unique thing for sure. So communication can be different for sure, but it doesn't mean you cannot communicate. And what I suggest is like having a routine around it. So Rick and I usually, we put our boys to bed at night at around 8. And then we kind of like, I don't know, brush teeth, shower, whatever, we're doing things. And then like maybe 8:30, we get in bed together, or we hang out in the living room and watch a show. And like before we watch a show, we'll do some catch up. How was the day? Kind of touch base on each other. How was work? Rick is not a big talker about work, and that might be unique. Some guys say a lot, but Rick will just be like, it was good. And then I'll hear later that something happened, but that's how he is, and I just accept that. He tells me he'd rather like prioritize us when he is home. And I want to clarify that. I know I talked about that in some other videos, but it took me a while to accept that, because I'm a talker. Obviously, I can talk on this video for a while. So we have to accept our spouse's communication style. And if you feel like disconnected from your spouse, tell them that, and tell them you need to plan a date, you know, on their next day off, or create a routine like we have, where it's like a regular thing of kind of checking in with each other. When Rick was working nights, it might have used to have been like his days off, if we could have lunch together or something like that and touch base. Or even if the whole family is, if our boys were here on his days off, maybe we'll sit at the table together longer and our boys will go play and then we'll talk, right? So I feel like we've kind of created that where we're prioritizing each other on his days off to reconnect. The next thing is always on duty. So our officers, it depends on each person, might be a little different, but I feel like Rick is told by his department he's always kind of on duty. So this is related to my next topic, which is concealed carry weapons, or concealed carry guns. And everybody is different on this topic. Rick does conceal carry all the time legally in our state. He's allowed to as an active police officer. And so he always has it on him. That kind of really makes me aware that he's always on duty. Even if he is not on shift, he feels like he needs to take care of any issue that were to come up. We haven't faced any, thank God. But that's something that is kind of, maybe you have to get used to it, and it's taken me time to be like kind of defensive of Rick, because other people might think that it's weird that he has the concealed carry weapon. We tend to have chosen to surround ourselves with people that kind of get us and accept us for who we are, because I feel like it's more so like, if you accept it and then other people are questioning it, it can kind of be stressful. So we've just chosen a community, a group of people to surround ourselves with that are supportive of it. But there's things like just how your officer will want to face the door at restaurants, which is kind of a stereotype thing, but it is true. They want to see where everything is. When Rick and I go to the movies, he likes to sit towards the back so he can see the whole auditorium. So those are kind of things that I've gotten used to over time, and like it just becomes habit. And the next thing that I want to talk to you about, my little puppy is coming to bug me. Oh no, she's gonna lay down. Okay, I'll show a little video of her at the end. The next thing is faithfulness. So this is something that I hear from other wives, and that I've made kind of some short form video on it, like cheating and people being worried about that. And anytime I do, like it blows up. It is really, and I ask people like, why do you think that? And they just said it's relatable. Because our officers work this like unstable shift, maybe it's easier for them to be unfaithful. If they are doing undercover work, maybe it's also easier. And so there's definitely some of that goes on. I think you need to choose a partner where you feel like you trust them. I have never worried about that with Rick, and might sound ignorant, but I just felt like we had dated 10 years on and off before marriage. So I really knew him, I felt like. And we both are just kind of like no drama people. And so I felt like I could trust him. We were even long distance for like 2 years after getting married. And I never, again, just didn't worry about it. I think that even though we have known other officers that have maybe been his friends on the department that were unfaithful, that it didn't make me feel like Rick was. So that's something that you need to, I think, just be with someone that you can trust. And then if you are worried, maybe communicate with your husband about some transparency around things. Maybe can you visit him at the station? Would that make you feel better? Or just regular communication routines around his shift. I think there are ways to be transparent. Maybe allow each other to have your passwords to your cell phones or computers, things like that. Rick and I do, like we let each other on our phones, but I don't even care to see Rick's. Like, so I think everybody is different, but those are ways to ameliorate those issues. So another thing to get used to is that there are going to be your spouse's coworkers that he or she will be like really comfortable with at work, and they're going to have like their own little inside jokes, inside humor, and that's kind of like unique and something to get used to. They get really close. Like there is a bond between them that is different. Your bond will be unique with your spouse, but theirs with like their partner at work, that they go through these traumas together, is special. And it's hard to beat it. Like I used to joke that I was a third wheel when I was with my husband and his partner, who he had for a long time. It's like his best friend. And now his best friend's married. I'm so glad. I'm like, okay, good. Like now I have her to talk to when they're together. But that is something that is kind of unique as well. The next thing I want to talk about, which is a theme that I call how my officer sees things, which is definitely like their perspective. They have a perspective of the world that is different than yours, because they get to see kind of things behind the scene and what's really going on, and we get to live in like this sunshine and rainbows world, and that is really unique. Here's my little puppy. And that is something that is really kind of you have to learn over time. I feel like reading my devotional or reading Rick's book will help you to start to kind of understand how they might see the world differently. But even our sons, now they're 6 and 8, they're asking questions like, hey, why can't we go to this specific place? And I have to explain like, well, Daddy says that they do bad things there. What kind of bad things they do, they ask. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and over time we'll tell them more that we know they can handle as they get older, but it's kind of hard to explain to children. But even for us spouses, it's like just over time I've learned to trust Rick's perspective, and I used to question it more, like, why do you think that? Why do you feel that way? So that's another thing to just be aware of. Another theme that I found when I wrote my devotional was injury on duty. So Rick had back surgery before he was 40, and he had been injured on the job, and my puppy's trying to play with me. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is hard to focus. So there's been like right after recovering from his back surgery, he broke his baby toe while doing jiu-jitsu class. And then I hear from like another fellow wife recently that her husband had knee surgery, and it's like, oh my gosh, their job is so physical, and it's more than we think. Like they don't show the physicality of it, I feel like, on movies, but they're constantly running, walking, jumping over walls, like fighting people sometimes, right? Like, or wrestling, you might say, whatever you want to say. But that is something that is very real that you may have to deal with. I told you earlier about motherhood. I think that's really unique, that we are unique in how we parent because of being a police wife. And so I urge you to watch the videos I have made on motherhood. Oh no! Okay, I think my puppy is telling me that it is time to wrap up the video. So I hope that this helped you to anticipate some challenges that you might have as a police wife and some practical tips to help you to overcome them. I hope that you will check out my Instagram, join my community on there. I have a blog, and then I've shared my book resources, and I will post those all below. I wish you the best of luck in your marriage. I have a happy one, and it's amazing to say that after 10 years, and we're so excited for the rest, many, many more years, but it took me a lot to get here, and I hope that I can help you to get to a place where you're happier, faster. That's my goal. So I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in my next video.